Hey there. So I went to a panel at the Paley Center called Dawson's Creek, A Look Back, where executive producers Kevin Williamson and Paul Stupin talked about Dawson's Creek. James Vanderbeek was there and some of the minor cast were there, and it was quite an experience as a writer learning my craft to hear what they had to say about Dawson's Creek. Now I know what you're thinking. Before you vilify me with the vitriolic internet diatribes, just hear me out. I am not ashamed to like Dawson's Creek. I know everybody has their shame show and, whatever floats your boat, but I want to say that Dawson's Creek was a good show. It was a great show. You have to understand it was part of my generation. If you grew up watching the WB before it was a CW, you'd know that it was a show that defined the network, which also defined the generation. And this was before Smallville, and I love Smallville. This was before CW. This is before Gossip Girl, before Mel's. Well, after 90210 Melrose Place on Fox, but before the CW versions of 90210 Melrose Place. So understand that context of the show. Dawson's Creek was a show about coming of age. It was honest, it was emotionally truthful, and as somebody at the panel put it, it's adolescence through the hindsight of a grown-up lens, which means the show benefited from the wisdom of the writers. They challenged our concepts of friendship, of love, of soulmates, of achievements, failures, life, death, etc. It covered a lot in its 6 years of the show. And what particularly appealed to me the most about the show was the diction and vocabulary. Just the way the characters spoke in their dialogue. It's clever, it's witty. It's like watching a Shakespeare play or reading a Jane Austen novel. You need a dictionary while you watched it, and I love that. You learn new vocabulary. They use words like platitudes, vitriolic, diatribe. Yeah, I know people say, real people don't talk like that. But I think if we lived in a world in which people talk like the characters in Dawson's Creek, that would be great. Instead, we have kids today who use internet speak, using words like lol and pwned and whatever nonsense words they come up with. If you ask me, I think internet speak kind of sounds tacky. I prefer Dawson speak over internet speak. And there's one thing you can't deny about Dawson's Creek. Graduates of Dawson's Creek have moved on to bigger and better things. Joshua Jackson's on Fringe. Michelle Williams was nominated for an Oscar for Brokeback Mountain. Katie Holmes married Tom Cruise, which wasn't much of an accomplishment, but yeah. And let's not forget the writers. Kevin Williamson. He was known for writing Scream. He moved on to write other shows. He's currently on Vampire Diaries, which I haven't seen, but whatever floats your boat. Speaking of vampires, if Dawson's Creek was a hit show today, if it was new, would teenage girls wear shirts that said Team Dawson or Team Pacey? Just a thought. And Tom Cavino and Gina Fattore moved on to Californication, which, if you pay attention, does have Dawson's Creek references. Greg Berlanti, he moved on to write for Everwood, Jack and Bobby, Brothers and Sisters, and he recently wrote the screenplay for the new Green Lantern movie. So that's worth checking out. That's the reason why I would watch the movie. And Greg Berlanti was the guy who came up with the $1 billion kiss. The kiss between Joey and Pacey, which ignited a love triangle throughout the series. There's a book called $1 Billion Kiss by Jeffrey Stepikoff, and it's very informative, especially if you're interested in learning about the television business, how it's done, and about writing. So that's a book worth checking out, and I can say a lot more about Dawson's Creek. Maybe I'll write about it in a written blog. Until then, that's my video blog.